Borrow, Burn. Hey, what's up? Hello, it's Lit Life with Miranda Reads, and today we are playing a game with Young Adult 2020 books, and it's called Buy, Borrow, Burn. At this point, I have read over 200 books so far this year, and I feel like I have a pretty firm grasp on some of the 2020 classics and some of the 2020 duds. So today I'm going to be telling you what my thoughts are. Should you buy the book? Should you borrow it from the library? Or should you burn it with fire? Well, metaphorical fire. I don't condone actual burning of books. Anyway, I'm really excited to get started. So, right off the bat, we have one of the most controversial books so far of this year. In case you were living under a rock this year, like I was until about a month ago, Suzanne Collins wrote a new book. It's called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Now this one is a prequel to her Hunger Games series. It focuses on Snow. Yes, President Snow. In this book, Cornelius Snow is not the president yet. He is a teenager. His family is living in abject poverty. However, they are trying to maintain the illusion of wealth. Now, in this series, we know that Snow is going to grow up to become the president of Panem, and he's going to be a pretty awful person. However, what was he like as a kid, as a teenager, really? And this book seeks to answer that question. We get some early Hunger Games action before it became like the Hunger Games. Now, as part of his graduation, he has to mentor one of the Hunger Games applicants, and he gets stuck with a girl from District 12. Essentially, just kind of follow his life as he's trying to bring his family out of poverty and back into a position of power. This one ended up tying up a lot of loose ends for me in Hunger Games, and I loved it. Now, I am seeing a lot of controversy online. A lot of people are saying that this one wasn't necessary or that Snow was an awful person. Personally, you can argue whether or not any book is necessary. Unlike a lot of the companion novels I see, the author isn't trying to portray Snow in a particularly positive light. He's an awful person, he always was an awful person, and he will forever be an awful person. And yet, it was so compelling to read. This book thoroughly entertained me. It thoroughly captured my attention. I definitely think that this one is worth a buy, especially if you're a fan of the Hunger Games like me. Next up, we have Girl, Serpent, Thorn. Now, I've talked about this one a few times on my channel. Just to rehash it real quickly, this one focuses on a princess. Everything she touches is poison. She's trying to seek a cure. She ends up getting more than she bargained for. It did have a little bit of a slower pacing, and some of the twists were a little bit predictable, so that's kind of my thing. It's just It was okay. It was alright. Do I have a compelling need to put it on my shelves? No. The cover is really pretty, so that might influence your decision, but personally, I would say just borrow this one if you're curious. Next up, we have The Kingdom of Back. And Marie Lu and I have a troubled history. I've read a lot of her books. I haven't liked many of them. This one focuses on the Mozart siblings, and in real life, like our real life, the Mozart siblings were touring all around Europe, and they also had an imaginary world called the Kingdom of Back. And in the Kingdom of Back, there's fairies, there's creatures, they are the king and queen. Now, this book, Marie Lu takes that concept and runs with it and makes a young adult book from it. And I love the concept, I love the idea, it just was missing that sparkle. It felt too rooted in real life and too rooted in real life struggles. So every so often you would get that moment of excitement, that moment of like, wow! And then it would disappear because they would do something else in real life. I do love the aesthetic of the cover, and if I were to find a cheap copy, I would buy it purely because I love the way that cover looks. But as far as the actual content, I would say it's a borrow-worthy book. The Bearmouth. Oh god. So spoiler alert, I didn't actually even finish this book. It was that bad. So The Bearmouth, as best as I can, context clues, sounding out words. Our main character is learning to read. He's writing a journal of his experience in the mines. There's something in the mines trying to get out, and he has to keep it in there. Which honestly, concept golden. However, it was written phonetically, and it was written so phonetically that it was a headache to read. I made it about 40% or so before I absolutely called it quits. It was a rough read. And I feel like if the author would have had mostly normal English and every so often she would have an excerpt from his journal, I would have been fine with the way it was spelled. However, the entire book, just chapter after chapter of it, the phonetic spelling really ruined the book. I read 40% and I have no idea what's happening. And that's purely because all I could do is try and focus on trying to decipher what that author is writing. So it's gonna be our first burn. Next up, we have Don't Call the Wolf. This one feels like it's almost in the Witcher world. So in this one, we have a teenage queen of the forest. She can shapeshift into a lynx, and she is essentially just trying to keep her forest intact. There are all kinds of creatures like Striga and monsters that are trying to kill the villagers. She's trying to protect them, but the villagers at the same time are terrified of her. In addition, we have Lucas. He is the last of a long line of dragon slayers, and all of his brothers left the forest. He's the only one remaining, but he's starting to feel the call to the forest as well. The two of them meet up and they strike a bargain where he will kill the dragon and she will guide him to the mountain where his brothers might be. This one, I don't think enough people are reading this one. I loved it. Like, this is a little bit of a longer one. Like, it's pushing 450 pages, but I feel like the pages were worth it. We were just on a journey with these characters. It was so much fun. I loved it. I liked the monsters. I liked how they were not like your typical YA fluffy monsters. They were like serious creatures who are going to like murder and kill people, which I guess says something about me if that's like my preference. But I think this one is worth a buy. It was so good. It was so good. Next up, we have Some Kind of Animal, which I've talked about a little bit on my channel as well. This one is a concept where there are two girls, they're twins. One lives in the house, one lives in the woods, and you're trying to piece together what the heck this world is. And this one, it was good, but like I had all of these thoughts whirling, all of these great possibilities, and they never panned out. They never were like what I expected, what I wanted to see. And while it was always somewhat interesting, it wasn't super engaging to the point where I would want to read it over and over and over. So because of that, I would say it's a borrow if you're curious, with a foot into burn, because I am very disappointed by that ending. So take that as you will. Oh, we have Scoop the dog. The Night Country by Melissa Albert. Oh, you are so precious. How about this? How about you like hang out right here? Does this sound good? So this is the second book of a series. And in this world, we have the concept of what if the fairy tales are real and what if they were let loose in our world. And this is like the scary fairy tales. We have our main character. She made it out of the fairy tale land and she has to try and essentially get herself used to the mundane. This one was a little bit grittier than the last round, but I love the first one so much and I really enjoyed this one as well. So all in all, I would say this one is worth a buy. Next up, we have Infinity Sun by Silvera. So Infinity Sun looked really, really good, and I've heard great things about the author, so of course I picked it up and I was so excited to get started. The concept is that there are these people who are celestials who get like these superpowers based off of the stars. In addition, there are people who are able to consume magical things and create their own superpowers that way. Our main character is a twin, he's gay, and he just wants to live his life. Oops, he has superpowers and now he has to kind of come to terms with his destiny. Now, the first 100 pages of this book honestly put it into the buy category. It was so cool. It was like just like a regular contemporary, but with his whole world in the background. However, the longer this book went on, the less I enjoyed it. There's so much involved when you're creating a fantasy world, and it really felt like he kind of got started and then it fizzled. It really needed to have more strength, and it also felt like the author was kind of leaning on the powers and the supernatural bits as a crutch for the characters. It got to the point like once a character died, I was like thinking, oh thank God, I don't have to remember you anymore. Oh thank God. Maybe if you're a huge fan, you might like this one a little bit, but from what I can tell on Goodreads, even the huge fans were not big fans of this one. So, and because of that, I don't think it's worth a buy. It's not worth a borrow. Therefore, it's worth a burn. Be Not Far From Me. Whew. Now this one was wild. For this one, our main character, Ashley, has always been very good at surviving in the woods. And she ends up going through a situation where she is stuck alone in the woods with no supplies, and she has to try and find her way out, and she has absolutely nothing, which makes it very difficult. This book is very much told only in her head, and as she does various things for survival. I thought it was fascinating. I always love survivor books, and this one was no exception. Also, whew, that scene with the opossum, oh my gosh, people. I don't think I could ever mentally recover from that one. That opossum scene was too rough for me, but dang, it was good. I definitely think it was worth a buy. It's a very quick read, but it's also a very gripping read. All right, so that's it. That is my buy, borrow, burn with 2020 books. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading. Bye.